Okay, so this is one of your homework questions in the lab. It says a sample of 400 orders for takeout food at a local pizzeria found that the average cost was $25 with S, so that's the standard deviation, was $18. Find the margin of error if we use a 95% confidence interval. So if I look at everything that's given to me, my sample size is 400 orders. My average cost, in fact we might put average cost because that's the mean, is $25, and then my standard deviation is $18. To be able to find the t-value, because I need that for the formula for margin of error, because the margin of error formula says to take the t statistic, so you'll be learning this week that that's its own distribution, multiply it by the standard deviation divided by the square root of the sample size. So you could either look up in a table, but the problem is most tables that you look at, like let me just throw one over here, won't have that value that you need of 399, because remember the degrees of freedom is one less than the sample size, and the sample size was 400. So what you can do in Excel, they actually have a built-in formula. You start with an equal sign, you type TINV, so for the t-distribution inverse, because I'm looking at the probability. Well, if I want a 95%, my alpha value is 0.05, and then notice the formula down here tells you what it wants. Then the degrees of freedom, which I just referenced this cell, which is 400 minus 1. And when I do that, I get a t-value of 1.966. So from here, to find my margin of error, as I mentioned earlier, notice I'm just referencing cells, but I take the t-value, 1.966, I multiply it by the standard deviation, 18, that's the B9, and I divide it by the square root of the sample size. Okay, so again, that's the t-value times the standard deviation divided by the square root of the sample size. All right, and then I'll let you interpret the margin of error, part B. Part C says, well, what if we want to change the confidence to 99%? Well, if we do that, all I have to do with my formula here is change my alpha from 0.05 to 0.01. Where'd 0.01 come from? 1 minus 0.99. And so now I have a new t-value that I can plug into my new margin of error, which once again is still the t-value, 2.588 times the standard deviation divided by the square root of the sample size. And so I have everything I need to find my confidence interval. Your confidence interval is your mean, in this case my sample mean, my average cost, minus the margin of error, and then plus my sample mean plus the margin of error. So that's what you'll see I did here. I took my average cost, 25, minus $2.33, my margin of error, and then right here I took my sample mean, $25, plus the margin of error, and that gives me my confidence interval.